Maya had learned to read the city's pulse in every flutter and echo. Perched high on the narrow ledge of a 22nd floor balcony, she felt the concrete girders hum with the footsteps of thousands below. The late afternoon sun, dulled by the haze of traffic exhaust, cast long shadows across the neighboring rooftops, ventilation units groaning, laundry lines sagging with damp clothes, and small rooftop gardens where banded sparrows flitted amidst potted ferns. From her vantage point, Maya could see the wide avenue 2 blocks away, where yellow cabs shared space with delivery trucks and cyclists weaving between lanes. The air trembled with the rumble of buses and the distant honk of horns, but somewhere beneath that orchestra of urban life lay a single discordant note that tugged at her instincts. She tilted her head, feathers ruffling in the draft that funneled between the skyscrapers. There it was again, the strained, urgent wail of a child's voice echoing up through the canyon of buildings. It was muffled at first, lost amid the roar of the city, but grew in clarity with each passing breath. "Mommy! Daddy! Please!" Maya's heart, small though it was, beat faster. She remembered the narrow alley where she'd hatched, the scent of her siblings, pressed close against her mother's warmth. She had watched newborn sparrows tumbled from high nests, and she knew that in this world, being alone could be as dangerous as any falcon's dive. The wind shifted, carrying the boy's plaintive cries like petals on a violent current. Maya sprang from her ledge with a sudden thrust of her powerful wings, each downstroke propelling her over the balcony railing and into the urban wind tunnel. Below her, the glass and steel facades blurred into a silver mosaic. She banked sharply to avoid the hazard lights of a window-cleaning gondola swaying against the building's side, then tucked her wings as she dived toward the source of the distress. The noise sharpened into footsteps on wet concrete, the scuffle of hurried feet, the slap of soles against puddles, and the faint scrape of a fallen backpack skidding across the pavement. Maya's keen eyes picked out a bright scarlet shape in the middle of the street, where the asphalt glistened with the sheen of an earlier rain. There, on the faded white crosswalk lines, knelt a little boy whose jacket shone like a beacon. He pressed one trembling hand against his mouth, tears coursing down his cheeks in rivulets that gleamed like crystal. His other hand clutched a frayed teddy bear, its fur matted and threadbare, as though it had been squeezed in panic long before the pavement's chill sank into his knees. Drivers slowed, horns blaring with frustration at the sudden blockage, but Maya felt the world narrow to that child's tear-filled eyes and his echoing plea. She dropped onto the edge of the curb with a soft thump, crouching low to reduce her silhouette against the open road. The boy looked up, startled by the soft coo that rose from her chest, a gentle rolling note that spoke of comfort and companionship rather than fear. In that instant, the world seemed to hush. The idling engines fell silent, the shouts of the frustrated commuters faded to a curious murmur, and the boy's sobs slowed to trembling hiccups. Maya edged closer, wings half spread as if to shield him from the glare of the city's harsh lights, and blinked once, her dark eyes steady and kind. He reached out a tentative hand, his small fingers brushing the soft feathers at her breast. In that touch lay a silent pact. She would guide him home, and he would follow her through this maze of concrete and glass. Maya cooed again, a soft summons that sent the boy to his feet and set his gaze on the long, undulating ribbon of street ahead. With cautious steps he rose, wobbly at first, clutching his bear in one arm and letting his free hand hover near Maya's wing. Behind them, the city exhaled a collective breath, and the first chapter of their shared journey began. A journey that would carry a frightened child through the heart of the concrete jungle to the safety waiting on distant front doors. They set off together into the thickening rush of evening traffic, Maya's wings beating in precise, silent strokes above the boy's head as he stumbled along the curb. His small hand curled instinctively around her leg feathers whenever a car whooshed past too closely or an impatient horn blared behind them. Above them, towering streetlights flickered on, casting pools of yellow glow that stretched across the wet pavement like molten gold. The air smelled of gasoline and damp asphalt, and each breath stung the boy's lungs with a metallic tang. But he clung to Maya's guidance as if it were a lifeline, feet padding through the growing puddles while she led him toward the nearest intersection. As they reached the corner, a city bus groaned to a halt, doors yawning open to swallow passengers in its cavernous belly. A group of late commuters spilled onto the sidewalk, umbrellas snapping open like dark flowers in the rain. Maya swooped low, skimming past siren-flashing police cars and weaving between startled umbrellas, her wings barely clipping the tops as she angled across the street. The boy followed her lead, pressing close to her side, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and relief. A woman in a navy trench coat reached toward him, concern etched on her face, but Maya cooed sharply, a quick commanding note, and the woman fell back, trusting the dove-gray pigeon to guide them both. They passed a row of shuttered storefronts, a bakery still glowing with residual warmth, loaves of bread cooling on wire racks, a bookshop whose dusty window displayed half-opened volumes of fairy tales, a pharmacy with its neon cross, blinking fretfully against the gathering twilight. Maya circled over each doorway, as if to consult some invisible map, before dipping to the boy's shoulder and urging him onward. He glanced up at her with a grateful smile, thin and tremulous, and she ruffled her feathers in acknowledgement before continuing her purposeful flight. The city's maze of alleys and side streets proved more treacherous, slick cobblestones that sent the boy's feet skidding, stray dogs darting between parked cars, and the sharp hiss of steam vents that shot hot air into the damp night. But through it all, Maya was his constant sentinel. She would alight for a moment on a low fire escape or a delivery truck's bumper, tilting her head until the boy caught up, then lift off again in a smooth arc that beckoned him to follow. Her gentle coos rose above the symphony of urban noise, jackhammers, car alarms, distant laughter, carrying a note of reassurance that pried the boy's terror from his chest and replaced it with determined trust. At last, they reached a quieter street lined with brownstone stoops and wrought iron railings. Warm light spilled from curtained windows, and the faint smell of dinner, roasted vegetables, garlic, simmering soup, drifted into the night air. Maya hovered before one stoop, her eyes fixed on a small figure peering through the window, a woman's face contorted with relief and fear, hands pressed against the glass as if she could will the door open with her gaze. The boy's knees trembled as he stepped forward and tapped on the frosted glass. Moments later, the door swung inward, flooding the sidewalk with lamplight, and the woman swept down the steps, arms outstretched. With a final gentle coo, Maya alighted on the top rail of the stoop's railing, watching as mother and child embraced, tears of relief glimmering in the porch light. The boy turned to her, eyes shining with gratitude deeper than any words, and whispered, "Thank you," his voice thick with emotion. Maya dipped her head in a silent nod, then stretched her wings and launched herself upward into the soft glow of the street lamp, vanishing into the city's endless tapestry of light and shadow. Below, in the quiet hum of the neighborhood's triumphant stillness, the boy and his mother shared a single look of wonder, forever bound by the memory of a small pigeon's unwavering guidance through the concrete jungle. They descended a narrow iron staircase into the subway station, the boy's hand still clutching Maya's damp feathers for guidance. The heavy scent of damp concrete and lubricating oil greeted them as they stepped onto the platform, where H-shaped pillars bore the graffiti of countless late-night commuters. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a harsh, washed-out glow that made every shadow leap and twist. The rumble and roar of an approaching train sent sparks dancing along the rails, and the tiled wall opposite them blurred with motion as the silver cars thundered in. Maya led the boy forward, skirting the yellow safety line etched into the platform's edge. The train's doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and a tide of tired faces, office workers with loosened ties, nurses still in scrubs, students clutching backpacks, spilled onto the platform. Maya tapped her foot against the metal floor, her dark eyes locking onto the boy's as he took a deep breath and followed her onto an empty car. The doors hissed shut behind them and the carriage shuddered into motion, the city's underbelly flashing by unseen behind sealed windows. Inside, the train smelled of stale sweat and half-forgotten lunches, and the lights hummed in steady buzz. Maya hopped to a vacant pole, balancing on one foot, and the boy found a spot beside her, placing the teddy bear on the seat between them. His heart still pounded, but Maya's soft coo, a gentle rhythmic whisper, echoed through the metal car with calming precision. He pressed his forehead to the cool window, watching the tunnel walls hurtle past in rhythmic blur. Flickers of old posters peeling at the corners, stray drops of water arcing from grate to track, the faint glow of safety lights receding into the distance. With each station they passed, Linden Street, Elmwood, and then the under-river crossing at Bayview, the boy felt the tension in his shoulders ease. Mai hopped down and fluttered beside him, peering into his eyes as if to say, "We are almost there." The train slowed at Union Square, where she guided him off onto the crowded platform. Here, the commuters' faces turned in curiosity, some offering warm smiles. A uniformed conductor tipped his cap to Maya as she passed, a silent nod of respect between city-born spirits. They navigated the station's winding corridors, signs overhead pointing to Exit C, the P for Parkway, the red arrow to the street level. Water dripped from a broken pipe overhead, forming tiny ponds in the grates beneath. The boy's sneakers squeaked against the tile as he followed Maya's sure stride, until at last they emerged into the open night air of the bustling downtown plaza. Neon signs buzzed. 24-hour Market, Pharmacia Central, Hotel New Haven, each a beacon in the cool air. Maya led him across the plaza's mosaic of brickwork, past the bronze statue of the town founder, and down the tree-lined sidewalk toward the cluster of brownstones, where he'd begun his journey into fear. As they turned the final corner, the parked cars and wrought iron fences of the boys' neighborhood came into view. The bus stop they recognized stood empty now, lit by the soft glow of a single street lamp. There, beneath its shelter, stood a uniformed school crossing guard who had watched anxiously for news, her eyes widening as Maya swooped down to circle above the boy's head. He ran forward, arms pumping, to the guard's outstretched embrace, still clutching the black and white wings of his unlikely guide. Maya landed on the bus stop's signpost, shifting her tail feathers before offering one last coo, an unmistakable city bird salutation of a mission well accomplished. As she lifted into the night sky, the boy pressed his face into the crossing guard's shoulder, tears of relief glistening in his closed eyes, and in the hush that followed, the steady hum of distant traffic, the faint rustle of leaves along the sidewalk, Maya vanished among the glimmering towers, leaving behind a safe passage etched forever in the heart of the concrete jungle. They slipped quietly out of the glare of the plaza's neon signs and into a different world, a cobblestone pedestrian mall lined with scaffolding and empty storefronts, where the scent of sawdust and fresh paint lingered in the damp evening air. Above them, the skeleton of a half-built condominium loomed, its steel girders etched against the darker sky like the ribs of a fallen beast. Maya led the boy through the maze of orange safety cones and yellow tape, her footsteps sure along the uneven stones, even as his small sneakers skidded on loose gravel. Somewhere amid the half-lit work lights, the clank of a swinging beam and the distant thump of a jackhammer reminded him that danger could hide behind the quietest facade. They paused at the mouth of a narrow alley where discarded wooden pallets leaned against a brick wall streaked with yesterday's rain. The alley's entrance was half blocked by a roll of chain-link fencing that had been pushed aside to let a cement mixer through earlier in the day. A solitary security camera swiveled above, its red light blinking in the gloom. Maya fluttered up to perch on the bent metal, cooing softly to urge the boy forward. He swallowed his trepidation and ducked beneath the fencing, fingertips brushing against the rusty wire. The world seemed to constrict in that moment, the high walls pressing in, the echo of his own quickening heartbeat, and the single-minded comfort of Maya's steady presence at his side. Beyond the fencing, the alley opened onto a forgotten courtyard, half overgrown with weeds that pushed through cracks between the paving stones. A single street lamp cast a halo of pale light, illuminating a toppled dumpster and the scattered remains of old cardboard boxes. Rats scuttled away in panicked jitter, a reminder that even small creatures had reason to fear the night. Maya dropped from her perch to the ground, ruffling her feathers in a signal. "This way." The boy edged past the dumpster, ducking under a low scaffold plank, and followed her along a narrow service road that ran behind the block of row houses. Each house stood silent, their windows darkened, but a faint glow from a single kitchen window in one home caught his eye, promising warmth and familiarity. They emerged from the service road onto a narrow back street, where the rumble of an idling delivery truck drifted through the mesh of chain fences. The truck's engine hissed as it cooled, and a lone figure in a reflective vest leaned against the cab, smoking a cigarette. Maya landed lightly on the truck's side mirror and cooed sharply, a quick, insistent note, and the driver's head snapped up, eyes narrowing at the unexpected visitor. He stubbed out his cigarette and stepped forward, offering a reassuring smile to the boy, before pointing down the street and calling out, "Head that way! Just a few more blocks!" The boy nodded, encouragement blossoming in his chest, and followed Maya past the idling truck, weaving between parked bicycles and stray traffic cones, until they reached the familiar hum of ambient street life once more. Here, at the back corner of Maple and Fifth, stood the neighborhood newsstand, its metal shutters rolled halfway up to reveal racks of colorful magazines and newspapers. The news vendor, a kindly old man with a weathered cap, leaned on the counter, eyebrows raised in surprised delight as Maya hopped onto the ledge to greet him. He spilled a quick stream of Spanish and English, free of accusations, and pointed down the side street toward the lamplit 18th century townhouse where the boy's family lived. "You've got company waiting," the news vendor said, voice full of gentle laughter. The boy pressed his hand to Maya's damp feathers, then took a breath and set off down the final stretch, guided by the soft glow of porch lights and the towering silhouette of his home. As he rounded the last corner, he saw his mother's face appear at the window, eyes wide with panic melting into joyous relief. Maya pitched down from the newsstand rooftop, cooed one last time, and landed on the front gate's finial, her dark eyes gleaming in the yellow light. The boy ran forward, arms outstretched, and was swept into his mother's embrace. Behind them, the news vendor waved, and above, Maya ruffled her feathers in farewell. Then, she launched herself into the night sky, wing beat soft against the still warm breezes of the late evening, carrying the memory of her watchful guidance through the concrete jungle back into the wide, waiting city. They passed the newsstand's kindly glow and turned onto the wide thoroughfare, where the street lamps formed a shimmering corridor of orange light. Here the sidewalks were smoother and wider, and late-night cafes spilled warm air out onto the sidewalks, the heady aroma of roasting coffee beans mingling with the night's cool breath. Maya led the boy along the curb, her gait unhurried but unwavering, wings half spread as if to shield him from the occasional spray of car tires. He clutched his teddy bear tighter, its soft fur still damp from the earlier puddle, and followed her into the heart of this alive, sleepless city. Ahead, the broad facade of the municipal library rose above them, its bronze doors closed but its carved stone frieze lit in stark relief by floodlights. This was their landmark. 2 blocks beyond lay the park where the boys' school bus stops at, and from there, it was but a short, straight line home. Maya circled the library once, eyes tracing the intricate tiles of the sidewalk, before dipping to touch the boy's shoulder with an encouraging coo. He gave a small nod and picked up his pace, racing to catch sight of the marble steps that curved like a gentle wave to the heavy doors. But the smooth sidewalk gave way to uneven flagstones as they skirted the building's side entrance, the stones heaving where tree roots had grown beneath them. The boy stumbled over a raised edge, and a wave of panic surged through him as his knees scraped the rough stone. Maya reacted instantly. She fluttered down to perch on the nearby railing, ruffling her feathers in a soft admonishment to steady himself. He placed his hands on the iron bar and righted his footing, drawing in a breath that trembled with relief. Maya's dark eyes glinted with approval as she tilted her head, and he smiled through the sting of his scraped knees. Determination rekindled in his chest. They pressed onward, rounding the library's corner, into a narrower lane, where the pavement gave way to cobblestones slick with the night's earlier drizzle. The quiet here was almost eerie. Aside from the occasional clatter of a far-off delivery truck, there was only the echo of their footsteps and the soft coo of Maya guiding them forward. Lantern-bright windows punctuated the darkness. An art studio where a single easel stood abandoned before a half-finished canvas. A florist's shop with wilting bouquets waiting for morning's bustle. And finally, the glass-fronted doors of the small neighborhood grocery. Maya led the boy inside, the bell above the door tinkling like a gentle chime. The shopkeeper, a kindly man in a stained apron, looked up from his ledger, his brows knitting in concern before softening in understanding as Maya hopped onto the counter. The boy approached timidly, and the man rose to his feet, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Without a word, he pointed to a narrow back hallway that cut through the store, lined with stacked crates of oranges, cans of soup, and rows of bottled water. At the end of that hallway lay a freight elevator that led up to the residential apartments above. The boy took a hesitant step, eyes shining with new hope. Maya cooed encouragingly, floating above the crates as if to clear the path, and he followed her down the hallway, each step echoing on the linoleum floor. The elevator doors hissed open, its interior old and cramped, with a single flickering bulb overhead. The boy pressed the call button for the fourth floor, his home, and Maya perched on the folded flat of the closed safety gate. When the doors opened above, the boy grabbed the pigeon's wing in silent thanks before stepping out into the dimly lit hallway above. Maya followed him out onto the plush carpeted corridor, the smell of laundry detergent and warm pizza drifting from open doors. They passed apartment after apartment until at last they stood before the door numbered 407. Familiar scratches made by the boy's eager fingers. He pressed his knuckles to it, heart pounding, and heard the hesitant turning of the lock before the door swung open. Behind it, his mother stood, tear-streaked and wide-eyed, arms poised to gather him into the tightest embrace he had ever known. With one final, tender coo, Maya fluttered onto the banister of the stairwell, watching as mother and child disappeared into the warm glow of home. Then, with a soft rustle of her wings, she launched herself into the night's gentle currents, ascending once more into the city's glittering tapestry, her silent mission complete, her concrete jungle vigil honored in the whispered stories that would follow long after she had vanished into the urban sky. By late evening, the city's pulse had slowed to a softer beat, but Maya's work was not yet done. She watched from her perch atop the stairwell banister as the boy was reunited with his mother at 407, their embrace radiating relief that echoed through the hallway like a prayer answered. Behind them, the woman closed and latched her door with one hand while wrapping the boy in her other arm, rocking him gently as she murmured soothing words. Maya cooed softly, a final note of comfort, before slipping down the banister and out into the warm glow of the landing's nightlight. She returned to the elevator and descended to the groceries back hallway, where the shopkeeper had closed up for the night. The man stood at the doorway to the stockroom, blinking in surprise as Maya alighted on the counter once more. He tipped his cap in acknowledgement, their silent partnership sealed by the shared knowledge of the night's miracle. Gently, he gathered Maya in his hands and offered her a small piece of stale baguette, crumbled and soft, an urban pigeon's feast. With a grateful coo, Maya accepted it, nibbling daintily before fluttering up to the ceiling beam to dine in peace. Meanwhile, downstairs on the sidewalk, the mother and son stepped back into the street. A patrol car idled at the corner, its lights off but dashboard lit, and two officers emerged, clipboards in hand. The mother approached them, tears still glinting in her eyes, and began her halting, relieved report. How her son had slipped from her grasp at the bus stop, how she'd called out until her voice grew hoarse, and how, almost as if by miracle, a small pigeon had guided him through the city's labyrinth back into her arms. The officers exchanged looks of astonishment and then nodded, promising to follow up and see that the boy received any help he needed. As they spoke, a small crowd gathered, neighbors drawn from open windows and early bedtimes, drawn by the patrol car's presence or the woman's relieved sobs. There were gasps of wonder as the boy, still clutching his teddy bear, animatedly recounted his journey, the fire escape, the subway ride, the alley of dumpsters, the newsstand, and finally the stoop. She was so brave, he said, pointing up at the building's eaves, where Maya flicked her tail in greeting. Children pressed forward, faces alight with curiosity, whispering, "Look, there she is!" Grown-ups murmured about city wildlife and unlikely heroes, and someone produced a smartphone, capturing a quick photo of Maya against the night sky before she took flight again. High above, Maya soared through the urban canyons, wings catching the faint glow of street lamps as she ascended toward her rooftop roost. Below, the boy and his mother walked home hand in hand, the patrol car following to ensure they made it safely. The community's night watch had shifted, from gridlocked streets and subway platforms to the shared delight of a city united by a small pigeon's courage. By the time they reached their front door once more, word had spread. Maya the pigeon had become a local legend, her story a salve against the city's anonymity, a testament that even in the concrete jungle, a little kindness on feathered wings could bridge the widest divides and guide the lost back home. The following morning, the city awoke to a different kind of buzz. Cafes filled with morning commuters, swapping news that stretched far beyond the usual traffic snarls and subway delays. Maya the pigeon's heroic journey had gone viral overnight. Baristas chalked headlines on sidewalk sandwich boards. Homecoming hero, Pigeon Guide's lost boy, and City Buzz missing child, found thanks to Urban Pigeon, while patrons clustered over steaming mugs of coffee, retelling the boy's adventure from memory. In front of the municipal library, passersby paused to leave small tokens at the base of a commemorative plaque the local historical society had hurriedly installed, a bronze relief depicting a pigeon in mid-flight, wings outstretched in resolve. Across town, the boy and his mother visited the precinct to collect a certificate of commendation. The chief inspector pinned it proudly to his uniform. In recognition of unparalleled courage and community service, awarded to Maya the pigeon. The boy's eyes shone as he watched an officer gently coax a bit of seed from his hand into Maya's beak. She accepted it with the poise of a tiny queen, then preened her feathers before taking flight once more. Behind them, neighbors gathered on the station steps, clapping and cheering until Maya disappeared into the early sunlit sky. As the city's skyscrapers rose in the distance, life's rhythms resumed their steady beat. But Maya's story had woven itself into the urban fabric. Architects at a new development project redesigned their rooftop gardens. With generous pigeon nesting boxes, and the Parks Department installed a Maya Lane sign along the route she had followed. From the high-rise balcony to the boys' stoop, school children colored pigeon portraits in art class, and the public library ran a special exhibit on city wildlife, featuring a glass-encased journal where the boy and dozens of others had scrawled, "Thank you, Maya," beneath hand-drawn hearts. But through it all, Maya remained unassuming. Each dawn, she returned to her original balcony ledge, the one 22 floors up, tucking into the cool concrete groove beside a small clump of potted geraniums. From there, she watched the city unfold, cooing softly as school buses trundled by and mail trucks rattled along the avenue below. And on clear mornings, when the wind whispered through the laundry lines of neighboring rooftop gardens, she would spread her wings and circle the same path that had carried the lost boy home. Over skylines and subway vents, alleyways and newsstands, ever vigilant, forever ready to guide another soul through the concrete jungle whenever need arose. In every clink of seed on tin dish and every gentle coo greeting the dawn, the city remembered her, a small pigeon whose unwavering wings had shown that even in the vastest metropolis, one determined heart can lead us all safely home.